Just a flesh wound.
Look, stop that!
Chicken!
What are you gonna do, bleed?
Come back here and take what's coming to you! I'll bite your legs off!
You treat me like an inferior. Well, I am king.
Oh, king, eh? Very nice.
Bring out your dead! Here, he says he's not dead.
Yes, he is.
I'm not.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail is not just a classic comedy, it is a revolutionary work that shattered all conventions and redefined the concept of creativity in cinema. Released in 1975, the film is a vivid testament to the idea that art does not need massive budgets or elaborate special effects to make an impact. With its absurd storyline, eccentric characters, and humour that is both silly yet meaningful, Holy Grail has become a cultural icon with an influence that far surpasses its era. However, behind its humorous exterior lies a treasure trove of incredible behind-the-scenes stories, from financial struggles and bold decisions to spontaneous moments that became legendary. This is more than just a movie. It is the culmination of boundless creativity and a fearless can-do spirit. Now, let's dive into the untold secrets behind this legendary film, Monty Python and the Holy Grail 1. Graham Chapman faced alcohol addiction. Graham Chapman, who played King Arthur, not only had to battle the absurd nights on screen, but also faced a true enemy off-screen, alcohol addiction. Amidst the cold and grueling filming conditions in Scotland, Chapman frequently forgot his lines, stumbled to the point of being unable to hold a sword, and appeared visibly unsteady. Yet, the most remarkable thing was how the entire crew silently supported him through his struggles. John Cleese, his co-star and close colleague, shortened Chapman's dialogues to make them easier to memorize. Directors Terry Gilliam and Terry Jones cleverly adjusted
The armor
shooting
soaked up
schedule
water
to
like a
ease
sponge.
the pressure on him. However, it
Dish
was Chapman
scrubbers.
himself
It
who
looked
wrote
decent.
his own story of rebirth by deciding to quit drinking right in the middle of filming. A brave yet risky decision. As withdrawal
Holy Grail.
symptoms
He
took their
survived
toll,
the one that really
he
mattered.
persevered through the cravings, the harsh Scottish weather,
The cast tried to help.
water-soaked armour, and the relentless filming schedule. The result? A heroic and relatable King Arthur, marked by both vulnerability and resilience. Graham Chapman showed that sometimes the greatest kings are not only those who fight on the battlefield, but also those who conquer themselves. 2. The sparrow debate was improvised. If you've ever laughed out loud at the endless debate about whether an African swallow could carry a coconut, here's a fun fact. That scene wasn't in the original script. In truth, it stemmed from a completely random conversation among the film crew. On a long, freezing day of shooting in Scotland, with nothing to do but wait for the perfect lighting, the Monty Python team started arguing about anything and everything. One of the most absurd yet lengthy topics was the biological capabilities of swallows. How could such a small bird carry a coconut? And if it could, would it be an African or European swallow? This ridiculous conversation had everyone in stitches, and they immediately decided to include it in the movie. What's hilarious is that this spontaneous moment turned into one of Holy Grail's most iconic scenes. It wasn't just a comedic highlight. It became a symbol of Monty Python's commitment to perfect absurdity. A real-life joke turned into a legendary on-screen dialogue, proving that sometimes the silliest ideas make for the greatest inspiration. 3. Michael Palin played over 12 roles. Michael Palin wasn't just an actor in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, he was an entire cast. From the noble Sir Galahad, the mud-slinging peasant, the sarcastic gatekeeper, to the leader of the Knights Who Say Ni, Palin took on 12 different characters in a single movie. Yes, 12. But don't let that number fool you. Each character had their own distinct personality, so much so that audiences could barely tell they were all played by the same person. What's truly impressive is how the film's ridiculously tight budget forced the crew to maximise every resource, with Palin becoming their Swiss Army knife. He constantly switched costumes, voices, body language, and even shot consecutive scenes as different characters without a break. the crew jokingly called him a one-man production team because he could do everything from acting to creating characters. The result? A collection of hilarious, absurd, yet incredibly vivid characters that audiences will never forget. Palin wasn't just versatile, he was the heart of the film and the perfect example of boundless creativity, even when the budget was practically non-existent. The movie was funded by famous rock bands. If it weren't for the generosity of rock legends like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Genesis, and Elton John, Monty Python and the Holy Grail might never have been completed. Initially, all major film studios rejected the project, deeming it too bizarre and unprofitable. On the brink of financial collapse, Monty Python turned to an unexpected source: their friends in the rock music world. Led Zeppelin contributed £31,100. Pink Floyd used profits from The Dark Side of the Moon, and Elton John also dipped into his own pocket to invest. Fascinatingly, all these donations were made not for profit, but because these artists believed Monty Python was creating something special. This story isn't just about finances, it's a testament to the power of art and friendship. The outcome? The movie was completed on time and became a cinematic masterpiece. These rock bands didn't just save Holy Grail, they helped Monty Python cement their place in comedy history. And while they didn't appear on screen, they were the silent heroes behind the film's resounding success. 5. Coconut clapping replaced real horses. Real horses? Too expensive. Horse trainers? Out of the question. Faced with a shoestring budget, the crew came up with a solution that was both cheap and effective: coconut clapping. 2 coconut halves were clapped together to mimic the sound of hoofbeats, while the knights performed as though they were truly riding steeds. The funny thing is, the idea started as a joke, but when tested, it worked surprisingly well. The coconut clapping not only saved money, but also became one of the most iconic details of the film. The image of knights seriously riding with their feet while their squires clapped coconuts behind them left audiences in stitches. Furthermore, this detail perfectly encapsulated Monty Python's signature absurdity. They didn't just save money, they turned a limitation into an opportunity to create a uniquely hilarious moment. It's the kind of bold creativity only Monty Python could pull off, turning the impossible into the unforgettable. 6. The original script had modern elements. Think Holy Grail was already bizarre enough. The original script went even further. An early draft included scenes of medieval knights riding through modern London, fighting in parking lots, and even being chased by police through skyscrapers. This idea stemmed from Monty Python's desire to break every filmmaking rule. Why not mix past and present in the most ridiculous way possible? However, the idea was quickly abandoned due to budget constraints. Nevertheless, the group retained a touch of modernity in the film's ending, where the police arrive and arrest all the characters. This conclusion wasn't just unexpected, it was a punch to the audience, leaving them bewildered about what just happened. It was Monty Python's way of showing their rebellious spirit. They didn't need to follow any rules, not even when ending their story. 7. One castle was used for multiple scenes. If you thought the castle scenes in Holy Grail were filmed in multiple locations, the truth is, everything was shot in a single place, Doune Castle in Scotland. With a limited budget, the crew couldn't afford to rent multiple locations, so they had to get creative and turn one castle into several settings. The crew constantly rearranged furniture, changed camera angles, and closed off certain areas to make it seem like different castles. For instance, Doune Castle served as the Black Knight's stronghold, Camelot, and even the witch trial site. What's amusing is that shooting there wasn't easy. Scotland's weather was perpetually cold, wet, and had poor lighting conditions. But by combining ingenuity with a bit of cinematic sleight of hand, Monty Python successfully transformed a small castle into an entire medieval world. This is a perfect example of how the crew overcame financial constraints to create unforgettable moments on screen. 8. The killer rabbit and fake blood. One of the funniest moments in Holy Grail is the scene where the killer rabbit mercilessly slaughters the knights. But behind the scenes, this moment was just as bloody in its own way. The crew used a real rabbit for the scene, and to make it look more terrifying, they smeared fake blood all over its pristine white fur. The problem? No one told the rabbit's owner about this. When she saw her rabbit covered in red, she nearly fainted, thinking it had been injured. The crew had to spend a lot of time explaining, apologising, and cleaning the rabbit. Interestingly, the scene was originally intended to be a light parody, but it turned out unexpectedly violent and hilariously absurd. The killer rabbit became one of the movie's most iconic details, showing that sometimes the most memorable moments come from a mix of improvisation and unexpected mishaps. 9. Armour made from painted wool. The gleaming metal armour worn by the knights in Holy Grail might look majestic, but the truth is, it was made from wool dipped in paint. With their tight budget, the crew couldn't afford real metal armour, so they improvised by crafting armour out of wool and covering it with silver paint to mimic the look of steel. While it worked visually, the practical challenges were immense, especially in Scotland's rainy climate. The wool absorbed water like a sponge, becoming heavy and freezing cold. The actors, including Graham Chapman and John Cleese, had to endure hours of filming while wearing soaking wet, stiff armour. They often had to take breaks to warm up or change clothes because they were utterly exhausted. Despite the discomfort, the actors delivered stellar performances, turning these shabby costumes into a believable, comedic element of the film. This is yet another example of Monty Python's ability to turn limitations into comedic genius, proving that creativity can shine even in the harshest circumstances. 10. The Black Knight scene was inspired by a folktale. The scene where the Black Knight is dismembered limb by limb yet defiantly screams, "It's just a flesh wound," has become one of the most iconic moments in Holy Grail. But the inspiration for this scene came from an old folktale about a warrior who refused to surrender despite being gravely injured. Monty Python took this story and gave it their signature twist, turning it into a symbol of absurd stubbornness. Interestingly, filming the scene required extensive use of primitive props and effects. John Cleese, who played the Black Knight, stood on a rotating platform while the severed limbs were attached using magnets and pulley systems. The result was a scene that perfectly blended violence, humour, and satire. The Black Knight wasn't just a character, he became a symbol of Monty Python's spirit, absurd, resilient, and refusing to conform, no matter how nonsensical things became. 11. The ending was written at the last minute. If you found the ending of Monty Python and the Holy Grail strange and unlike anything else, here's the truth. It was written at the very last minute because the team didn't know how to wrap up the story. Initially, Monty Python had no clear idea of how to conclude the quest for the Holy Grail. They toyed with various ideas, from epic battles to absurdly comedic finales, but none of them seemed to work or fit the budget. Finally, they settled on a simple yet bizarre solution. A modern-day police force interrupts the story and arrests all the characters, abruptly ending the film. This ending didn't just confuse audiences, it was a bold twist that broke all cinematic conventions. It was Monty Python's way of saying, "We don't have to do things the usual way." Strangely enough, this improvised last-minute decision resulted in one of the most memorable endings in film history. Audiences either burst out laughing or sat in bewilderment, wondering what they had just watched. But that is quintessential Monty Python, always surprising, never predictable. 12. Elvis Presley was a huge fan of the film. Who would have guessed that the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, was one of Monty Python and the Holy Grail's biggest fans? Elvis was known to host private screenings of the film at his Graceland estate, watching it dozens of times with friends and staff. One of his favourite lines in the movie was, "It's just a flesh wound," which he frequently quoted to tease those around him. Remarkably, Elvis didn't just enjoy the film, he loved introducing it to others. Friends often mentioned that whenever Elvis felt stressed or tired, he would watch Holy Grail to laugh and unwind. His love for the film not only speaks to its timeless humour, but also shows how Monty Python's absurdity could resonate with even the biggest cultural icons. Elvis's enthusiasm helped cement the movie's place as a cultural phenomenon, proving that its humour transcends boundaries and generations. 13. The witch trial scene laid the foundation for a sitcom. Among the funniest scenes in Holy Grail is the one where a young woman is accused of being a witch. But what many don't know is that this scene laid the groundwork for a legendary sitcom. Connie Booth, who played the accused witch, later collaborated with John Cleese, who played a knight in the film, to create Fawlty Towers. The chemistry between the two actors during this scene sparked the idea for a new comedy project. Booth's brief yet hilarious performance as the panicked young woman, paired with Cleese's sharp, sarcastic delivery, showcased an undeniable comedic synergy. From this collaboration, Booth and Cleese developed Fawlty Towers, which went on to become one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. This moment from Holy Grail wasn't just a comedic highlight, it was the beginning of another iconic chapter in television history. 14. The script was groundbreaking from the opening. If you were baffled by the strange opening of Holy Grail with its unrelated subtitles about Swedish moose and the on-screen firing of the subtitle team, here's the backstory. It was a deliberate parody of the serious art films of Swedish director Ingmar Bergman. Monty Python drew inspiration from Bergman's philosophical, heavy-handed style, particularly his iconic film The Seventh Seal, and decided to turn it into a joke. They added absurd subtitles, narrated a nonsensical story about moose, and even mocked their own production team. Even the background music was crafted to mimic the somber tone of Bergman's works, before abruptly shifting to pure comedic chaos. This opening not only set the tone for the movie, but also highlighted Monty Python's audacity and creativity. It was their way of saying they'd mock everything, even revered cinematic classics. 15. The movie saved Monty Python from bankruptcy. The Monty Python group was on the brink of financial disaster before Holy Grail was released. Their previous projects, though beloved, hadn't been particularly profitable. But with a budget of just $200,000, Holy Grail grossed over $5 million globally, a massive success at the time. This financial windfall not only saved the group from debt, but also paved the way for larger projects, such as Life of Brian and The Meaning of Life. What's remarkable is that their profits didn't just come from ticket sales. The group also earned significant revenue from merchandise, including scripts, posters, and even toys related to the film. Holy Grail wasn't just a comedy, it was a financial lifeline that allowed Monty Python to continue creating and solidify their place in cinematic history. 16. Extras in the film were tourists and students. If you noticed that the crowds in Holy Grail seemed a bit unpolished, there's a reason for that. They weren't professional actors. The film's limited budget meant the crew couldn't afford to hire extras, so they turned to local tourists and students. In exchange, these volunteer actors were offered a free lunch and the chance to appear on screen. Surprisingly, the offer was met with enthusiasm. The crowd scenes, including the mob of peasants and the group chanting "Knee," were filled with these amateur extras. While some struggled to remember their lines or accidentally laughed during filming, Monty Python decided to leave those moments in, believing that the imperfections added to the humour. Once again, Monty Python turned financial limitations into an opportunity to create something uniquely hilarious. 17. The film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. It might surprise you to learn that a wildly absurd film like Holy Grail had its premiere at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival, a venue known for serious, high-art films. When the movie was screened, the Cannes audience was initially confused, unsure of what to make of the absurdity on screen. But soon, laughter filled the theatre. Monty Python didn't stop there. They made their arrival on the red carpet just as memorable. Instead of traditional suits and dresses, they showed up dressed as knights, riding fake horses with coconut clapping sounds. Their antics caused a stir, turning Cannes seas into their own comedic stage. This unconventional premiere not only earned Holy Grail international recognition, but also reinforced Monty Python's reputation as fearless innovators who weren't afraid to break the rules, even at the world's most prestigious film festival. 18. The name Monty Python has no meaning. Ever wondered what Monty Python means? The answer is nothing at all. Early in their formation, the group experimented with a variety of bizarre names, including Owl Stretching Time and Bicycle Repairman. Ultimately, they settled on Monty Python, simply because it sounded silly and memorable. The word Monty evoked the image of a fictional British figure, while Python was added purely for its absurdity. Interestingly, during the production of Holy Grail, the group even considered calling the movie Bicycle Repairman and the Holy Grail. Thankfully, they scrapped that idea. While the name Monty Python may lack meaning, it has become synonymous with groundbreaking comedy and unrestrained creativity. 19. Iconic line. Origins were unexpected. The knights who say "knee" are among the most absurd and hilarious elements of Holy Grail. But the truth is, their famous line wasn't part of the original script. During a brainstorming session, the Monty Python team realized the scene needed something ridiculous to make it stand out. No one could think of anything until John Cleese suddenly shouted, "Knee!" The entire room erupted in laughter, and just like that, the line made it into the movie without further edits. What's even more surprising is how this single word became a cultural phenomenon. Fans began shouting "knee" at conventions, events, and even casual gatherings for years after the film's release. This spontaneous addition proved how Monty Python's unique brand of humour could turn even the simplest, most nonsensical ideas into something iconic and enduring. 20. The Broadway musical adaptation, Spamalot. After Monty Python and the Holy Grail became a cultural sensation, no one expected it to be adapted into a hit Broadway musical titled Spamalot. Spearheaded by Eric Idle, one of the group's members, the musical wasn't just a direct retelling of the film, it reimagined it with new songs, jokes, and creative twists, all while retaining Monty Python's signature absurdity. Initially, some of the other Monty Python members criticised the project, fearing it would commercialise the original work. However, when Spamalot premiered, it became an instant success, winning a Tony Award and captivating audiences worldwide. Ironically, despite their initial objections, the other members benefited from the musical's financial success. Spamalot wasn't just a tribute to Holy Grail, it was proof that Monty Python's absurd humour could evolve and thrive across different mediums, from film to theatre, and continue enchanting new generations of fans. Monty Python and the Holy Grail is not just a comedy film, it is a timeless declaration of creativity. Behind the absurd laughter and ridiculous situations lies an inspiring story of boldness, determination, and the ability to turn challenges into opportunities. From its limited budget and spontaneous decisions to its boundless creativity, the film became a cultural phenomenon, redefining how people perceive comedy and cinema. Nearly 50 years later, Holy Grail remains as captivating as ever, a work of humour that is both intelligent and eccentric, chaotic yet profound. Iconic moments and unforgettable lines like "knee" or "it's just a flesh wound" not only satirise all conventions but also have brought generations of audiences to tears with laughter. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to support the channel. And of course, hit the notification bell so you won't miss any upcoming videos. See you all in the next one.